Helen, therapist, author, and your host of the I Don't Think We Talk Enough About podcast, where each week I'm joined by wonderful guests who bring their warmth, wisdom, and wealth of experience to talk about the things I just don't think we talk enough about. And this week, I'm delighted to welcome the widely acclaimed relationship coach, Jillian Turecki. Jillian is from New York and she's joining me today live on Zoom. And she offers her no-nonsense style approach in such an accessible, relatable and understanding way to millions of her followers on social media. Jillian is also the host of the wonderful podcast, Jillian on Love, and I can't recommend you listening to that enough. She is such a joy to listen to with great advice. I've invited her here today to talk about her brand new book, It Begins With You. This book is a must read. I have circled so many beautiful parts in it that I know I'll go back to time and time again. Jillian so eloquently throughout her book reiterates that when we improve the relationship we have with ourselves, we improve the relationship with others. What a truth. Jillian, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is such a pleasure. And we were talking off camera for a bit and thought we'd better press record because we would
I know.
really appreciate your time today. So thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
And we're talking about your brand new book.
Yes.
Which comes out, well, when this podcast comes out, it will be out on the 14th of January.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got it here. I was lucky enough to get a copy before. And it's called It Begins With You, The 9 Hard Truths About Love That Will Change Your Life. And I'm going to show the camera. I know it does like a flip thing, but it's...
Yeah, no, it's actually perfect.
Perfect. It's such a brilliant book. I have turned over so many pages, circled so many things. There were so many beautiful parts of it that I literally wrote in capitals next to it, love this. Just really wanted to absorb it and sit with the words you'd written. They were really beautiful.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you.
No, you're so welcome. But I wanted to, you've introduced it in terms of 9 truths. I love the title, by the way, because I think what I love about it is that empowering agency and responsibility about that we can do something and not feel so helpless. But I wanted to read out that you said the 9 truths, unless you want to read them out. Can you remember them off the top of your head?
No, go for it. Read them out. Read them out.
I do that sometimes with authors and they say, oh, I can't remember them all.
No, I know. But it's a weird thing that happens. Yes. We're like, wait, what order? Yeah.
So I've got them here clearly for you. So 9 chapters and they are entitled It Begins With You, which I loved, which I really want to focus on today. The mind is a battlefield. Absolutely. And I really want to talk to you about the monkey mind that you bring in. That was brilliant. Lust is not the same thing as love. You have to love yourself. You must speak up and tell the truth. You need to be your best self, even after the honeymoon. I loved that. You cannot convince someone to love you. No one is coming to save you. And you must make peace with your parents. Incredible, incredible chapters for us to dive into.
I'm just glad that they resonated so much with you.
Oh, so much. And the thing is, I've got so many things I want to read out from them. But I wanted to start with It Begins With You, because I think it starts there. And I wanted to really ask you, why did you start there? You're so generous with your own personal story in your book. And I think that's what will resonate with so many people when they pick it up. You're not just speaking as a relationship therapist. You're speaking as someone who's really been through it.
Yes.
And
that was important. Yeah, that was important to me because number one, that's sort of my story. But number two, for people to understand that that the advice that I'm giving is not just because of the study that I've done and the work with clients that I've done over the years, but it's from my own personal experience. And I wanted them to know that I understand how they feel.
Yeah.
Obviously, no two stories are exactly the same, and there are going to be people reading the book who have experienced things that I no doubt have not experienced, and vice versa. But I know grief, I know trauma, I know heartbreak. I know what it's like to have a complicated relationship or a terrible relationship, really, with a parent. I know what it's like to have been in great relationships, and I know what it's like to have been in a relationship that's abusive. So I wanted people to know that the message, it begins with you, and this idea that we are all the common denominator in our own relationships. The message isn't, well, then you're the problem. Well, then you're the only problem. No, no, no. It's very possible that you could have been in a relationship or more than one relationship with someone who was mostly the problem. That is a fact. But and so we have to be able to hold a few things as the truth at the same time. And you still chose that person. And maybe that you were not your best self in that relationship either, even though they were mostly the problem. And most relationships, it takes two. And so it's not a 50-50 split. Like I said, it's not like, oh, you're half the problem, I'm half the problem. It's just that if we want to see a change in our lives,
Mhm.
and for the purposes of this book, very specifically our love life,
Yeah.
we have to be the change. And that there is so much that is out of our control as a human being living this experience on planet Earth. Like there's just very few things that we can control, but there are some things that we can control. And that is what is outlined in this book.
Yeah. No, of course. And I love the way you say it's not a 50-50. It's not that, is it? And so often you can see couples thinking it is, and it's not. And it's a give and take, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
But you talk about the patterns we learn. You talk about how our relationship touches us and teaches us about our fears, our patterns, and our beliefs. And I wanted to ask you, for someone listening now, what advice would you give to someone in showing them how to hold the mirror up? Because it's not easy, is it?
How to hold the mirror up for themselves or for the other?
For themselves. We'll go to the
But
other
yeah,
soon. But
yeah,
yeah.
no, no, yeah, for themselves. So it boils down to mindfulness and self-awareness.
Okay.
So, one of the maybe the easiest ways to explain this is if you're triggered by something that your partner does or doesn't do, you can ask yourself, why is this bothering me so much? Like if you're really deeply, not just like, oh, I'm a little annoyed, like really deeply annoyed by something or hurt by something, how much of are you projecting onto your partner? How much of that has to do with your past relationship history? How much does that have to do with your mother or your father? And then communication is huge.
Mm.
Uh, we, I think that the mirror that we have to look at often is the communication mirror, because communication is a science and it's an art. And it's not taught in school. I mean, we might learn how to articulate, we might learn how to argue if we're studying to become a lawyer, how to litigate, but how to communicate in a way that focuses on harmony and restoration of harmony when there's disruption of harmony in a relationship. We are just not taught this. And we all come to a relationship with communication patterns. These
Yeah.
are things that we picked up from childhood and from our peers and from society and from culture. So we all have these communication patterns. And so I think that one of the biggest mirrors, being the communication mirror, is how can you communicate better?
Yeah.
Where do you have to regulate your emotions better? Where do you have to be more expressive? Where do you have to be clearer? So I think that's the big one. And so it's just about being aware of that. It's being able to say, you know what? I have communication patterns. I have patterns. I have certain insecurities
Yes.
that I come with.
Yeah.
And and I have to be honest about those insecurities first with myself and with the other and take responsibility for them. Hopefully, if you're with the right person, navigate them together with some care, and that's really where it begins.
I love the way you said that, but I also love the way you brought in around the we're not taught it. We're not taught we learn on the go, don't we? And
Yes,
what works for someone might with someone might not work with another one, and what they're bringing isn't the same as what someone else brings.
correct.
So we're constantly getting all this new information in, aren't we, the whole time? And I always say that with the couples I work with, hold their vulnerability in the same way you'd like your vulnerability held. And I
That's great.
think and we so often it's really vulnerable to share how you feel, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really vulnerable. And that can be a very difficult thing to do if we've not taught or we didn't grow up in that. But what I love, because obviously we're touching here a little bit on attachment, and obviously attachment, wonderfully, people are getting much more to grips with attachment styles. But it can be quite a dominant force, can't it, in a space, as if you can't shift from.
yeah. It doesn't. It's not the whole story.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that into the book so eloquently. Do you want to just expand on that a little bit here?
Sure. I mean, look, our attachment style starts with childhood. It's basically there's the child who, when their parent goes away, like leaves the room, that they're confident that their parent's going to come back.
Mhm.
There's the child, and then that's a secure attachment. And then there's a child who, when the parent leaves the room, they have immense separation anxiety and they're afraid that they're going to be abandoned or the parent's not going to come back. And then there's the child that sort of has an indifference to that, you know, so that could be more of like an avoidant attachment. So we have this sort of proclivity when we enter a relationship that a romantic relationship that, you know, some people are more wired to value togetherness and closeness. And some people are more wired to value independence and freedom.
Mm.
And the goal of a relationship is connection, but one person might feel connected by doing certain things, and another person in the relationship might be like, well, that's not enough for me. So I prefer to see it in that context, you know, like where your values are and what you are more wired for as growing up. It's not the whole story though, because you can be in a relationship with someone where you always know where you stand. And so your anxious attachment never comes up or
Yeah,
rarely comes up. You can struggle with some avoidance, but be in a relationship with someone who you feel very secure with, who you feel very safe with, who maybe you're in a relationship with someone who's highly independent
yeah,
and really protects that independence so that that's not triggered. So, or you could be an avoidant and in a relationship with someone who's very, very dismissive of you, and then you become anxious.
yeah,
So it's really not fixed. What I explain in the book is that at the end of the day, so metaphorically speaking, if you peel away the onion at the core, what you get at the center is everyone is afraid that they are not enough in some way, that they
yeah,
don't belong in some way, and that if that fear, or I should say, when that fear is triggered in you in a relationship, your survival, part of your brain is going to kind of light up kind of activate. And then you are going to fear that love is going to be taken away from you. And so, what you need to understand, this is another mirror, is what is the strategy that you use to protect yourself from that emotional pain?
Yeah.
So, do you cling? Do you get very controlling? Do you get controlling in the sense that you are demanding, or do you get controlling in the sense that you pull away and you shut down, and that's your manipulation? Do you get totally preoccupied with the possibility that the relationship could end? And then therefore you start to do things like lie or please or be a people pleaser, or become a chameleon, not speak the truth. So I wanted to broaden people's minds and perspectives to not just look at it through the narrow perspective of attachment style, but understand your own psychology, your unique own psychology, and your own patterns in reaction to your insecurity when it's triggered inside of a relationship.
Brilliant. And what's brilliant about that is we're looking at the unique individual experience within that relationship.
Yes.
It gives you so much more information of how you can work on that part of you,
Yes.
can't it? So much
Instead
more
of
than just
diagnosing yourself.
instead of diagnosing and labeling yourself,
Yeah.
oh, it has to be this.
Yes.
I was going to ask something. Oh, that's it. We're talking about the other. What actually, no, I'll backtrack a little bit. The first thing I wanted to ask was what gets in the way of holding up that mirror? Because it can be so difficult. So,
Yeah.
what gets in the way of us seeing those patterns? Because some people can't see their reactive patterns.
Well, if someone's pointing it out to them and they refuse to look at it, I mean, that could be a sign of narcissism, of
Okay.
some level of narcissism. Um, but more times than not, it's defensiveness, it's shame,
That's a
it's
big one, Jillian. That's
yeah,
a
it's
really big one.
shame, it's immaturity.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, so many things can kind of be boiled
Yeah.
down to just immaturity.
And not in a negative way, in a really understanding way. They've not had the ability to mature in that way.
Exactly. But what I will say is this. One is not a very pleasant person to be in a relationship with if they're not willing to look in the mirror.
I know. I know. And then and then actually what you have to reflect on is that your relationship probably isn't flourishing and healthy either. So something needs to
No,
change.
no, it's definitely not. And I think because here's the thing, you could have someone who has a very hard time looking in the mirror, but who's actually very loving and adoring. And so it can be confusing, right? Because this person is loving, they're a good person, they're not a narcissist, they're not toxic, but they're really having a hard time being self reflective and growing. And so that's a matter of values, when you're in a relationship, like how you have to really just decide how important that is to you. And you have to walk the talk as well. And one thing that a lot of couples get wrong is you need to change this and you need to look in the mirror and you got to do this, this, and this, and this. And if you don't, I'm going to pull away.
Yeah,
And that never motivates a human being to change. Punishment and control does not motivate us to change. Positive reinforcement is what motivates human beings and a lot of animals, such as dogs, to change.
of course it does. Of course it does.
So I do think that accountability and self-awareness are two of the most important relationship skills. And you need communication skills, but it's the person who has self-awareness and accountability who will work on their communication skills.
Yeah, of course it's a win-win, isn't it?
It's a
It
win-win.
really.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to bring in there was about, and that self-awareness, but that awareness with the other as well, that
Mm.
we can so often neglect in relationship. So we can be really self-aware, but not aware of the effect we may be having on our partner.
Well,
And
then
you,
that's not where self-awareness.
no, you make a very good point. You're right.
Yeah.
So no, I'm just thinking about the self versus
No,
the
but I
other.
love that you brought that up. I'll
Yeah.
tell you why, because a lot of people think that they're really self-aware, but they have no awareness of how their behavior impacts the other. And so that's their blind spot.
And that's the blind spot because I was
Yeah.
going to say the way you represented that so perfectly in your book. I can't remember the chapter, but it was a wonderful case study. I have really read this book.
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean,
I'm
there's a lot of
just like,
case studies. Maybe I'll remember which one it is.
it's a case study. I might have jotted down who it was. Oh, Kelly and Mike.
Ah, Kelly and Mike, yeah.
And brilliant. And it really was one of those moments where I know this is like a light bulb moment in couples therapy when you were trying to get to the bottom of how Kelly was reacting, what her part was in it, because we're not just working with them being faultless in the
Yes.
relationship and it being the other person's fault. We work with couples to look at what their part is in it. And you were really delving, really trying to get to it. And it wasn't obvious.
No, it's
And
hard.
then she said something about the way she responded or reacted to him. And you said so brilliantly, that must have been really stressful for Mike.
Mm.
And I was like, that moment. And she really sat with it, didn't she?
She
And she
did.
hadn't had the awareness that her reactions could also be triggering a reaction in him. I thought
Hmm.
that was brilliant, Jillian.
Oh, I'm glad it resonated so much because, yeah,
No,
as you know, it's like working with couples is very hard. So
it
very,
is.
very, very hard. The
But
hardest thing I've
I,
ever done. Yeah.
it is. But what I loved about it was highlighting that when we understand the other, we can start to repair.
Yes.
And you bring in rupture and repair and the importance of repair work throughout the book. And actually, I don't know if it was in your book. I think it was in a podcast of yours. You've got a brilliant podcast for those that are listening. It's called On Love.
Yeah.
It's
Jillian on
one,
love.
Jillian on
Yes.
Love.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it, Jillian.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you chat away and it all makes so much sense and it's beautiful. But you were talking in one recently about repair. And I don't know if it was your take or a friend of yours that talked about repairing immediately.
Oh, yeah. I think it was me, but this idea of the couples I've seen who really have like the strongest connection are the ones when there's a problem, they deal with it head on. They don't waste any time. It's like they roll up their sleeves and deal with it right then and there,
Yeah.
more
Do
or
you
less.
recommend that?
I do recommend that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I recommend that.
Yeah.
Um, no more, avoiding the conversation. Just deal with it. Has to be you and your partner against the problem. And if there's a problem, you sit down, you talk it through. I mean, there are certain things that may never be able to get resolved, but the resolve is that, we're letting this go for now. We're letting this go as just something that is. But yeah, I absolutely 100% think that there's no other way. I feel very strongly about that. I don't know if you do, but I really do. I think it's very important.
I do. I suppose it's just around timings and busy lifestyles and things like that, isn't it?
Sure.
But
I
even
mean,
if
if
it,
someone's at work, you
yeah,
maybe don't do it. But so I guess, yeah, what I mean is like, okay, so maybe they're at work, but then it's like, no, you're not talking about it tomorrow.
no,
I mean, obviously, if you're on a business trip, there's certain things, but it's like, no, as soon as you're home, you're sitting down, you're talking about it. Like
yeah,
we're gonna figure this out now. And so that kind of attitude, that kind of mentality is magic for a relationship.
I love the way you said magic because even as you're speaking, I'm thinking for another person to feel their partner thinks that it matters enough to fix
Yes.
this now.
Yes.
Let's talk about this now. And the togetherness there, that we're on the same team. We are
Yes.
together. And I love the way you said it's you and your partner against the problem, not against each other.
It's how it has to be. I know it can be very difficult, but it must be that way.
Because if we don't,
Because if you don't, then you become enemies.
I know. I know.
inside of your own relationship. You become adversaries instead of allies.
I know.
And that's not good.
That's not good.
And look, and it might get heated, it might get, complicated, but you have to have, you know, when you have the mindset that it's not about me fighting for myself and the other fighting for themselves, but it's us fighting for the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what's really important. So you sit down and you do that because that's what's right for the relationship.
No, of course.
And so there are a lot of people, myself included, who are not trained to sit down and talk through the problem. But you can still do it. You still have to. You still
You
have to.
can start.
You can start. You can start.
You can
You
start.
can lean into that discomfort and breathe. And maybe maybe during that conversation, one of you needs like a little timeout because you're anxious and you're overwhelmed. And so you say, okay, I'm getting like overwhelmed right now. Can we just take 10 minutes? The other person, their responsibility is to say, yes, sure, not, no, 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 you
No.
always do this, stay right here. And then, so there might be all of that happening, but it's still us against the problem.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that ties in really well with reducing the effects of the monkey mind.
Yes.
Because you're not left in that state of rumination, are you? Of what if, what's going on?
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about? I mean, I love the way you brought in the monkey mind, but I also wanted to, as I'll let you talk about monkey mind in a minute. But what I loved about it was I was really holding sort of compassion for a part of you in that, with
Mm.
regard to how open you were about your relationship with your father, and just
Hmm.
how that must have really played into your monkey mind a lot in relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Siblings don't necessarily have the same childhood, right? Because everyone, when parents have a child, there's context of what's going on in their lives, and then they have a child maybe 1 to 5 years later, and different things are happening, and we're all born with it's almost like a nervous system blueprint. Some people are born with a much more sensitive system than
Yeah.
others. This is just like reality. And so I was born with a very sensitive system. And I also was born when my mom was already highly depressed being married to my father. So there's that.
Of course.
And and so my nervous system made it such that I was highly sensitive.
Yeah.
And with that, I was able to pick up on very slight nuance, right? And my father was very ill at the time. He had undiagnosed severe bipolar disorder. He was a very well-known psychiatrist, but was, self-medicating
Mm.
and drinking. And we all had to walk around eggshells around him. And for me, that was just even extra intense.
Of course.
So yeah, I think that that whole everything that I described, my nervous system, how I was dealing with him, and then that made me very attached to my mother.
Yeah.
There's all these things, and so yeah, I think that leads to just a lot of anxiety, and then you live in your head,
Of course you do.
and because you're walking around eggshells, that's the opposite of having a voice. That's the opposite of confidence.
Yeah.
If you're walking around eggshells, the very metaphor of that is just
Yeah.
you're being so careful, right?
Look at
Yeah.
your body language,
Yeah.
literally. Like,
Like
don't, yeah,
so care, like don't,
literally.
yeah.
I know.
So yeah, I think that did definitely contributed to that. And look, I'm lucky. Like I certainly don't have a monkey mind like people who do really struggle with something like bipolar disorder or other things, but I have enough of a one that I did think that this was important. And then my study of yoga for 25 years
Yeah.
is the study of the mind and how to calm the monkey mind,
I,
how to tame it.
you've worked very hard at it, haven't you? You've worked really
Yes.
hard at getting there, and
Yeah.
you really have. And and that ownership and that honesty around your background. And I reading your chapter on how to make peace with your parents.
Mm.
That was, I mean, that's a really, really brilliant chapter for so many people because I should think that was quite difficult to write, but quite cathartic.
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
haven't got time to delve into that chapter, sadly, because I know that I only have you for a limited time.
I know, but that's a chapter that everyone should be, will want to avoid but shouldn't. And they don't need to be they don't need to be afraid. It's not scary.
No, it's not. And it reminds me of a quote I read a long time ago by a psychologist who said something along the lines of, "Why am I 55 and still blaming my parents?"
Who
There's,
said that?
I can't remember, but if I
Okay,
can, I
yeah.
will. But
It's a
I
good
remember
question to ask
it's a
oneself.
great question, isn't it? Because,
Yes.
but what I love, like bringing it back to your title, is where's your self-responsibility and agency? It's
Yeah.
there, and it begins with you. My book, Choose You, is out now and offers you ways to prioritise you, meet your needs, say yes to you, develop a more secure sense of self where you feel you matter, learn to set boundaries, wrap yourself in self-love, find your authentic self, and ultimately choose you in the same way you would want those you love to choose themselves too. Choose You, out now. I think I'll round that nicely up that section and come to the next section of my podcast, which is where I invite questions in for my Instagram audience.
Wonderful.
I get so many when I talk about relationships, and obviously we can't answer them all. So I pulled out about 5 or 6. We still won't have time to go through all of them, but if you don't mind, I'll read some out and we'll
Let's do it.
see how we go with them.
Yes, let's do
Um,
this.
obviously, as we said before, we don't have the context. We can't see behind the person or the question here. The first one was, how do I deal with a partner who isn't willing to work on their emotional intelligence?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, and I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I want to know what that person, what that person would define emotional intelligence as. Like, what does that even mean to someone?
Mm, mm,
I don't know if this is a woman who wrote in, but if it was a woman, is she experiencing that her partner is not listening to her?
mm,
That her partner is not expressing themselves? Um, is it that her partner doesn't know how to apologize?
yeah,
That's a tough one to answer because, what does that mean? But let's just say let's say it's all of the above, It's all of the above. So there's a couple of things. One is, what's your level of emotional intelligence? Like, everything that you need from your partner, are you giving it to them? And do they know how to meet your needs?
yeah,
Have you told them what you need from them and given them some guidance on how they can better serve you in the relationship?
yeah,
So that's the first step. The second step is, how else are they intelligent? Like, is it really true that they lack all emotional intelligence? I keep going back to this. What do you actually need from your partner?
yeah. Great question.
Rather than them just like, how do we get them to become more emotionally intelligent? What's missing for you?
Yeah, yeah,
Can we just narrow that down? What do you need that you are not getting?
yeah,
And let's strategize on how you can ask for what it is that you need in a way that hopefully will motivate them to meet your
yeah.
needs.
Yeah, I love that. It's taking that self-awareness again. What need isn't being met? what is it you need from your partner that then
Yes.
you're then thinking they're emotionally, say, unavailable or whatever it
Intelligent.
is.
Yes,
And obviously
exactly.
we don't know, but sensing that it felt like the communication wasn't there, didn't it? That question.
Yeah, I think it was just like the reframe is just always like you want your partner to be more of A, B, C, or D. Okay. Why? What do you need from
What do
them?
you need?
Because I think that one of the most important things that we don't learn in school or even in our family system, one of the most important things that we need to understand in a relationship, we have to understand what it is that we need.
I know, but
And
that's
then
so
we have to be able
difficult.
to, yes, and then we have
It's,
to communicate what it is that we need.
I know, I know. And sometimes those needs can be very, very basic human needs, can't they?
Sure,
Of
absolutely.
being seen, being understood, being heard,
And
feel,
then you have to say, get even more specific.
yep, no, go on. I love that.
Yeah, like I don't feel seen. What would make me feel seen is.
Yes,
What would make me feel heard
is.
is.
Yes, love that. And
Yeah.
again, really heavy on the I statement.
Yes. Really heavy on the I statement, not on the you
I
statement.
know.
And then it's a funny thing that I'm about to say, and I'll preface it with this is okay, let me first say it. Most people, not all, but many people could benefit from being easier to please in their relationship.
We're too
Eh,
complicated, but carry on.
or we just go into the like you need this whole like instruction manual in order for me to be happy. The exceptions are the people who tolerate and consistently tolerate nonsense from partners,
Yeah.
and their standard is so low. But there are many people who could really spend a little bit more time extracting joy and contentment from the little things.
Yeah. I
And
love
that goes to and that applies to relationships too.
I love that. And in that feeling the joy and the contentment, looking looking towards and leaning towards our partner to see the actions that they do make
Yes,
that
exactly.
matter. So
Yes.
often we can criticize, or we see it in couples, don't we? Maybe they show you in other ways that actually, if they stop doing that, what would that mean?
Yes.
Give that value,
Exactly.
give that value. That matters. Um,
Yes.
Great answer. Great answer. Okay, let's go to another one. Ah, this ties in really beautifully with your book, actually. Can you have a relationship? Sorry, can you have a healthy relationship with someone if you don't love yourself?
So the short answer is no.
Okay.
The longer, more nuanced answer is that, which is something that I talk about at length in the book, is
Yeah.
that you don't have to love yourself completely in order to be loved, to loved, or to be in a healthy relationship. However, you do need to see your worth and your value and your intrinsic value, even though there are parts of yourself that you struggle with.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to hold yourself in high regard,
Yeah.
even though you feel ambivalent towards yourself at times. That's self acceptance. So that's in my sort of world, self love and self acceptance are the same. And so if you can have moments like, oh, I really don't like that about me, or I'm really struggling with this thing about me and I want to make it better. Fine, great. Part of the human experience. Because I have these things, I don't think I'm worthy, really.
Mm,
That's a problem.
yeah.
You're not going to, it's going to be very hard for you to have a thriving relationship because of a couple of things. Number one, you're going to tolerate less than what you need and what you deserve. Number two, you could potentially push away love because you don't believe that you are worthy of it. So you're constantly pushing away the love of your partner. Yeah, those are the two main reasons.
It's very sad, isn't it, to see someone feeling like that about themselves, where love could be in front of them, but they're
Yes, it
pushing
is.
it away.
And I will say that I don't believe that we enter or that we have to enter a relationship feeling whole.
I'm really
We,
glad you said that.
no,
Please
we,
expand. Yeah.
yeah, we absolutely don't. And so I think that there's these two camps. One says you learn to love yourself in relationship. The other one says you have to feel fully whole to be in
Yeah.
a relationship. I don't agree with either theory. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. No one enters a relationship feeling 100% whole. We all have wounds. But if you've got so many wounds that you're not aware of, that you haven't addressed,
Mm.
that you are looking even unconsciously for someone else to fill, that's
Mm.
a problem.
It's a problem. It is a
That's a
problem.
problem. You are going to you're having problems in your relationships, guaranteed.
And in all your past relationships,
Yes.
you're going to see this pattern come up again.
This pattern, exactly.
This pattern, which when we start to hold that mirror up and look, we can break those patterns.
Yes.
We see it, don't we, all the time in our work? We see it.
All the time. We all have fears. We all have insecurities. They're gonna get in the way, but to what degree? And then do you believe that do you love yourself enough, or do you accept yourself enough to believe that you are deserving of love?
Expand on that. That's beautiful. How could you? Okay, I don't expect three tips, like three tip wonders, but how does someone to encourage them to feel that they are deserving of love?
Well, I'll name three things that they can do.
Okay.
One is learn how to meet your own needs. So, self sufficiency is really great for self esteem. And I don't mean self sufficiency in the sense that you don't let anyone help you. In fact, for some people who are hyper independent, one of your tasks is, and you can start small, is leaning on people a little bit, letting people help you, asking for help. That's going to do wonders for your self esteem and your self love. For others, it's learning how to be more self sufficient. Maybe, you have been overly reliant on others for your sense of worth. Well, then you have to start doing some hard things. You got to start facing your fears. You got to maybe start that new project. Maybe you need to take a course on money management so you can have some financial freedom. You have to learn how to meet your needs for safety, for adventure, for growth. So, learning what your needs are and how to meet them is huge for a person's self esteem.
Mm,
Learn to meet your needs, challenge yourself.
brilliant.
We have to do hard things because when we do hard things, this is why I love yoga because it's a metaphor for this. When we can breathe and stay and keep climbing that mountain, even if it takes us longer than everyone else, even if we have to stop a bunch and drink water and rest, the sense of accomplishment that you feel at the top of the mountain is that's the thing that feeds self-esteem. It's like
Hugely.
a child learning how to go to the bathroom on their own, to potty train. Once they do that, like that's the building of self esteem.
Yeah.
Or like I grew up in New York City, like the first time I got on the public bus by myself and went to school, then I'm getting a sense of self and I'm getting a sense of self esteem. So you have to do something that challenges you, learn to meet your own needs. And for some people, it's let people love you.
Oh,
Let people love you. Let people help you
yeah.
because you need people.
I love that. And we get so caught up in this self-sufficiency, don't we? That we got to try and do everything on our own and, got to be a
Yes.
healed version of ourselves before we can go anywhere else. But as Stephen Porges so beautifully said, we need co-regulation. We need another safe nervous system.
Yes, we do.
And we're meant to be in relationship, aren't we, with others? We're relational beings.
We are, it's our greatest need is connection.
Connection.
Yeah, we're not meant to heal. We're not built for isolation at all, at all.
No, I know. So the fear of losing that connection is what can be so damaging in a relationship, can't it, as well?
So damaging. And I would say that overall, generally speaking, it is a much scarier thought for women than it is for men.
Go on.
Because in general, women in general, okay,
Yeah.
women value connection more and men will value their freedom more. Now, that's why a lot of men, after they break up, they'll be sad, but they also have this sense of freedom again. So they kind of can bounce back, if you will.
Yeah.
Not every man, but a lot
Yeah.
of men can bounce back from a breakup a little bit faster than a woman because for a woman, it's that loss of connection that feels so damaging to her soul. And I think that one of the things that I like to help women in breakups is learning how to value their freedom more and to embrace that freedom and to value freedom more just in their lives. And then when I work with men, it's more with a breakup for them to kind of like honor those feelings and to feel their feelings.
Jillian, you're brilliant.
Oh,
It's
sweet.
honestly been such a brilliant conversation. I've loved talking to you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I wish I'd booked you in for 3 hours.
I know. We could just go on and on and on. I
Yes.
know.
Your book's so nourishing, so informative, and you're such a beautiful soul to listen to. I could listen to you all day, and I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I really can't. And I wish you all the best with your book. It's going to be such a success, I know.
Well, I'm so grateful for your kind words, and you're such a lovely human being, and it was my absolute pleasure to be here to talk to you today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jill, so, so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much if you could follow the show, leave a quick rating, and maybe even a review to let others know what you think and whether they may enjoy the conversation too. Your support genuinely means so much. Thank you. Enjoy your day.